Hello everyone and welcome to Reddit Forum 2020. My name is Francis Vivier and I'm a senior middleware and app dev solution architect for Reddit. Today we'll be discussing codeless integration for business using Reddit integration on top of Reddit Openshift container platform. Some of the topics that we'll be covering are: what are operators, deploying integration toolsets using operators, and then finally, we'll jump into a demo where we'll do some integration work without doing any code. The first big question is, what are operators and why should we use them? Let's start off by reading the following quote. An operator is a Kubernetes controller that deploys and manages a service or application in a cluster. But what does this mean to you? Effectively, it means an operator is a tool that can assist you in quickly and easily deploying a service without having prior knowledge of how it works. When talking about operators, there are 5 different capability levels that they provide. The first being basic install, where it can provision and configure a service on your behalf. Secondly, it has seamless upgrades, where it can upgrade from one version to the next with no interaction. This might include something like a database schema migration. Next is full lifecycle, where it includes functionalities such as backup or restore in the case of a failure. Next is deep insights, where there's full monitoring and alerting, so you always know what's going on with your services. Finally, the highest capability level, which is called autopilot, which aims to take away any human interaction. Deploying Reddit integration toolsets using operators and Openshift container platform is so easy. Reddit integration has operators to enable any user to install and use middleware and integration services in a matter of minutes. You do not need to rely on operations teams or have any prior knowledge of setting up services to get an integration project started. In our demo, we'll use the following components: Reddit AMQ streams, Reddit Views Online, and Reddit 3-scale API management. So let's just read up on what's going on. What is Reddit AMQ streams? Reddit AMQ streams is a Reddit supported implementation of the Apache Kafka project based on Strimzi. Apache Kafka is a leading real-time distributed messaging platform for building data pipelines and streaming applications. Some of its use cases include messaging, event sourcing, stream processing, and many more. Next is Reddit Views Online, which is an integration platform as a service based on Reddit Views. Its web-based toolchain and runtime run on Reddit Openshift container platform. Its user experience is focused on solving integration problems without writing any code. It supports enterprise integration patterns and, of course, is cloud native. Lastly is Reddit 3-scale API management. Reddit 3-scale API management makes it easy to manage your APIs, share, secure, distribute, control, and ultimately monetize them on an infrastructure platform built for performance, customer control, and future growth. It's multi-tenanted by design, it's extremely scalable through distributed services, and it is a developer portal for easily onboarding new developers for consuming your APIs. So, integration time. In our demo, we will install the toolsets required for this demo using operators, create the connectors for the integrations we are about to do, for example, Kafka, create a REST service that will accept a JSON message from an endpoint, do some minor transformation, and place the message on a Kafka topic. Next, we'll create a service that will watch this Kafka topic and add these values to a database. On the same REST service we added previously, we'll create a new connection that will get the data directly from the database. So let's start off by logging into Openshift. We'll create a project and then install our operators into that project. So we'll create a new project. We're going to call it forum-demo. And we've been automatically entered into this project. Now we'll go to operators and operator hub, which is a marketplace for installing operators onto your cluster. So we'll first start with AMQ streams and we'll install this operator. Next, we'll install Fuse Online. And finally, we are going to install 3Scale API Manager. As you can see, there's a community version and the Reddit supported version in here. As you can see, we have multiple update channels. So we can actually choose to install 3Scale 2.6 all the way to 2.9. While this is installing, we can see that our Fuse Online operator has finished installing. And while the other ones are busy, we'll deploy a Fuse Online instance. So we'll just go create syndesis. We'll call it Fuse Online. And this will start provisioning Fuse Online for us. Next, we'll go to our MQ streams. And this time we'll choose to use a Kafka instance. And we'll call it forum. And we don't have to configure anything else. We just click create. And then finally, we have to create a 3Scale instance. And we'll just use API Manager. And we're going to create. So on here, we'll just call it 3Scale. But what we do need to provide is this wildcard domain. So in my case, it would be the following. And then we'll click create. Now this is going to take a few minutes to complete. And once this is completed, we'll start doing integration work with Red Hat Fuse Online. Now that our integration toolsets are finished deploying, the next step is to go to the Fuse Online user interface. So let's go to networking and routes, and we'll select the syndesis interface. From here, we'll log in with our Openshift credentials. And we'll be presented with our Fuse Online user interface. What we want to do first is create a connection to Kafka. So Kafka message broker. We're going to connect to the forum-kafka.bootstrap URI. And this is the service name that's presented via AMQ streams. We'll select the plain transport protocol because 9092 is for plain text. And then we don't need a broker certificate. We'll test it, and as you can see, it's been successfully validated. We'll click next, and it's successfully created. Now we want to create our first integration. On integrations, we'll click create integration, and we'll select the API provider. And this is because our first integration is a RESTful API. From here, we can upload an OpenAPI specification, or we can just create a new one. From here, we'll create a new one. And we'll give it a name of Forum API. And the first thing is we want to create a data type. And we'll call it speakers because I'll use the forum speakers as an example. We'll add a simple JSON example and click save. And now you can see we have a bunch of properties that's been identified from our example. And as you can see, it's been identified as strings. Or we can change them to another data type if we needed to. Next, we'll add a new path, and we'll call it speakers. And we have a bunch of options that we can configure, but none of them are compulsory. But what we need to do is create a new operation, and we'll select post, because we want to post new data to this API. As you can see, each operation has its own summary and description. But what's important is the operation ID. So we'll say create speaker. And this option is compulsory. Next, we'll want to create a request body, because this is what we want to post to this thing. So we'll just make it required, and we'll click add media type of JSON, and we'll select the type of speakers. Next, we want to create a response, and we're going to choose 201 created because we've created an object. We'll give it a description of created speaker, and we'll add another media type of JSON, and the type being speakers. Once we click save, you'll see that it shows you this review actions, and this has actually validated our Open API spec for being valid. From here, we'll select next, and we'll be presented with our operations. Now we can create a flow on the post speakers endpoint. From here, we'll want to add a new step, and our step wants to publish to Kafka. So we'll just select Kafka, and then we just select a topic name called speakers. It will be automatically created for us. We'll select a JSON schema, and what we want to do now is paste a valid JSON schema. And this can be easily done by taking the JSON example and using a website that will convert it for you. As you can see, we have a data mapping error. This is because we need to map data from our REST endpoint to our schema. So we'll just map those. As you can see, this is pretty simple. And we'll click done. And now what's happened is the final return path for our API also needs to be mapped. And we do exactly the same action. And now we have completed. We can now save this as forum API and click save. Now we can go back to integrations, and we'll do our second integration now. So we'll click create integration, and this time we are going to subscribe to a Kafka message broker, and we're going to add in speakers and click next, and we'll specify a JSON schema again. Remember, this is a different integration, so you need to do it from scratch. After we've subscribed, what we want to do next is make a connection to a Postgres database and insert the data. So we'll run a query, and we'll run the following query to insert the data. As you can see, these values called colon, hash, and then a name. And these are basically placeholders for data mapping that will follow next. Now you'll see we'll need to add a data mapping step. And now we can map our JSON schema to our database schema. So we'll just do the same. And we'll click done. We're going to save this as Kafka to DB. We'll click save. Now lastly, we had an integration step that we wanted to get the data straight from a database. But instead of adding another integration, we'll just reuse the forum API integration. We'll click edit on it and edit its API definition. We'll go to the speakers path, and now we'll select the get operation because we want to get data from the database. We'll click on add operation, and we'll add our operation ID. So we'll say get speakers. And now we'll have to add a response. So we'll choose 200 OK. And we'll say get speakers. And click yes. And then we're going to add our media type of JSON. And then we'll not select speakers as a data type. We are going to choose array and then select speakers. And this is because we'll get multiple speakers back from the database. We'll click save and it's validated correctly. Now we'll go to the top and it says operation and we'll select our get speakers operation. And now we have to add steps to do something with the data. So we'll connect to a Postgres database. We'll invoke a SQL query. And then we'll just select this. Click next. And as you can see, we also have to do data mapping on this step. What we can do now is map the data. As you can see, we didn't add a SQL schema. And this is because the SQL connector will actually return the table columns back from our integration. So we can just select it from here. So and then finally we'll do our topic and we click done. And as you can see, so we'll just save it again. And now we have all our flows. The next step that we want to do is actually publish our integration services. So we'll click on publish. We'll save and publish it. And as you can see, it's assembling. So it's basically building the Java code and then building a container. And then finally deploying all the services required to Openshift. We'll also do this on the Kafka to DB. We'll edit it and we'll publish it as well. And now this one will start as well. This is going to take a few minutes and then we'll do some tests to validate that all of this is working. Now that all our integration workloads are completed, the next step is for us to actually test if the functionality works as we expected them to work. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to Postman, and then what we are going to do is get the speakers to validate that there's no speakers in the database. Then we are going to create a new speaker and then validate that the integration flow actually did what we expected. So if we run a get speakers, you'll notice that we get a 200 OK with no body type. And that is because we have no data. The URL at the top is a route that's exposed via Openshift, created by Fuse Online. And this is the endpoint that we created. Next we'll do create speaker. And we use the same endpoint, but we'll actually post a JSON body to it. And then we'll run it again and we get a 201 created with our JSON body type as a response. If we now switch back to get speakers, we'll click send and we'll actually get an array of JSON objects back with a 200, and this is exactly what we've set up. The next URL I just want to show is we use the same URL but with /openapi.json, and this is the OpenAPI specification that was generated when we created our Fuse Online server. So I want to copy this specification for just a few moments. So now we looked at these APIs, and to be honest, they're not very secure because we haven't done any security. So now we'll switch back to 3-scale and we'll actually do some security configuration. We'll go back to Openshift now and we'll just go to root and we'll look for 3-scale master admin, and then we're going to accounts and we'll create a new account and we'll just call it forum-api and we'll use my email address and I'm going to call it forum-api and click create. Don't update that. And as you see, my tenant was created. So I'm just going to impersonate this account for a moment so that we can test the functionality. It takes a few moments just to become ready. And we're logged into this tenant. From here, what we can do is we can set up the audience view, the API, and the API backends. So the first thing I want to do is I want to customize my API backend, and I'll use the one that's there already, but I'm going to change the location. So we'll use exactly what we used in our Postman script, so we'll update this backend. Next, we'll go to our API. When we go here, let's reload that. We'll go to integration and we look at our backends. We'll see that it's pointing to our integration service. From here, I want to go to mapping rules. And as you can see, there's currently a wildcard get on this endpoint. And I don't actually want that. Now I'm going to add new mapping rules, and we're going to say pattern is /speakers, and it's on a get verb, and then we're going to add another one for post, and that's /speakers. And as you can see, we have methods and metrics, and we can configure this if we add new methods and metrics, and we can use this in billing, etc. Now we go to configuration. We'll promote this configuration to our staging API class URL, and it's as simple as clicking on that, and it will also give us a test URL, and we'll use this in a few moments. Our next step is to look at our active docs, and we can actually customize our active docs from here. And we're going to edit this one, and I'm just going to use my OpenAPI spec that we've done already and update it. As you can see, it's just taking a few moments due to my internet connection. Our next step is just to quickly go to the audience, and I'll go to the developer portal, and we'll just go on content, and let's open our portal and let's visit it. As you can see, this is my Forum API portal. This is completely customizable, this look and feel for your customers. As you can see, we can see our plans. There are two currently. This is defaults. And we can go to our API documentation here, where we should be able to see our actions. And as you can see, it's got a get speakers and a post speakers. We'll go back to our 3 scale for a moment, and we'll go back to our API. Now that we are back here, we'll go to configuration, and we can actually see this is our URL that we've exposed via 3 scale. And this is just a default URL, but it's completely customizable. So let's go back to Postman just for a moment, and let's verify that we have security. So we'll do a get speakers, and as you can see, we now have a user key that's generated for us. When we create new users in 3 scale, we'll have more user keys to use. So when we run a get on this, you'll notice that we get our object back and it's now secure. If we change this 5 at the end to a 6, it will actually be invalid, so it will give us an authentication failed. And let's just change this back for a moment and speak about the mapping rules. So as we've mapped a post and a get, they are valid. If we had to change this to a put and we click send, it says no mapping rule matched. So you can actually create multiple endpoints on your APIs and only choose to expose some of them. And this is just a small subset of the security that's available in 3 scale, and it can be completely extended. So I'll just take a few moments to show you some of the security mechanisms in 3 scale as well. Let's change back here. And let's go to 3scale. So when we go to settings, we can configure the URLs that you see. So if you're not happy with that, we can change it. We can use API keys and key pairs, or we can use OpenID Connect or OAuth 2 as well. And we can change our response codes. When we look at our policies from here, we'll notice that there's an API cast policy once it's done loading, and this is the default policy. But what we could actually do is add in SSO role checks, cross-origin checks as well. We can do auth caching, TLS, mutual TLS, and a variety of other security, including edge limiting and rate limiting as well. And that concludes our demo. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed our walk through Codeless integration with Red Hat integration and Red Hat Openshift container platform.